Step 11, semen analysis. So in this step, I will explain three things: properties of semen analysis test, second, instructions on how you can provide semen sample, and the third is the test results. So first, test properties. So semen analysis is a reference test, which means that if you have abnormal result, you can still have a child, but your chance of fathering a child within a year of trying is only 5%. So essentially, when you have abnormal result, you can have two different categories of result. One is abnormal, but there is a sperm in the sample. Second, abnormal and there is no sperm in the sample. That's called azoospermia. When there is a sperm in the sample, you can have a mild, moderate, or severely abnormal result. When there is no sperm in the sample, when you have azoospermia, it can be in two categories. One is sperm actually being produced in the testes, but it's not coming out in the ejaculate. That's called obstructive azoospermia or post-testicular azoospermia. And second category is there's no sperm in the ejaculate, and actually the production is not happening in the testes. That is non-obstructive, or also it is called pretesticular or testicular. So pretesticular means that pituitary is not stimulating testes to produce sperm, which may be due to anabolic steroids, for example, or testicular. Actually, the pituitary is working well, but testis is not producing sperm. So that's very important to distinguish between these categories because they have a very different type of prognosis. In terms of fertility, so abnormal result doesn't mean that you are infertile, but it's quite likely that this abnormal result is contributing factor or main factor to your infertility. Depending on severity of abnormality, your fertility can be entirely normal. If you have slightly abnormal results, your fertility may be entirely normal, or subfertile, which means that you can father a child but it may take longer. And you may have infertility, which means you can have a successful biological child, but you need to have infertility treatment, maybe including IVF treatment. And unfortunately, sterility, which means that you are not producing sperm and you will not produce sperm, and you cannot unfortunately have a biological child. So that's very important to distinguish. So there's difference between abnormal results. Fourth thing we need to pay attention to is a variation in your semen analysis test results. So which means if you do a number of semen analysis tests, you have a difference in between the level, concentration and motility and morphology. You don't need to get alarmed about that. That's normal to have a difference in measurements. So usually measurements are quite small, and that's normal. Like if you check your blood pressure a few times across the week, you may have different results slightly. So similarly, semen analysis result can be slightly different. So you don't need to get too worried, and you don't need to overinterpret any certain result. Now, on instructions on production of semen sample. So when you're providing semen sample, you need to abstain from 3 to 7 days. So after abstinence, you need to produce semen sample. So ideally, you should produce semen sample in the premises of the lab. So usually you have a designated room, and the lab staff provides you with a pot to produce semen sample, and you produce and immediately hand over to the lab for analysis. If you can't do that, you can still produce semen sample at home, but you need to bring to the lab within 30 minutes. Ideally within keeping close to body temperature, for example, carrying in the inside pocket of your jacket. So it needs to reach lab within 30 minutes to get accurate results. So then you have three different type of results. One is normal result, and the second is abnormal result, but there is a sperm, and the third is that there is no sperm. If your result is normal, you don't need to repeat semen analysis. If it's abnormal or if there is no sperm, then you need to repeat semen analysis to check if actually that result is true or not, or maybe it's because of variation in semen parameters. Then you repeat the semen analysis. If you have a similar result, abnormal or azoospermia, then you need to have a full investigation to find out the cause of that abnormal result and treatment for male factor infertility. Okay, now I will explain the test results. When you do semen analysis test, you get a report on at least these 6 parameters: volume of the semen, concentration of the sperm in the semen, motility of your sperm, vitality of the sperm, morphology, and amount of leukocytes you have in the semen. In terms of volume, you should have at least 1.5 ml of semen in the sample. So then concentration wise, in 1 ml of sperm, you should have at least 15 million 1 million ml of semen, you should have at least 15 million sperm, or total concentration in whole of semen sample should be more than 39 million. For example, if you produce 3 ml of semen, if concentration is 15 million per milliliter, then of course it will be 45 million. That's normal. So then motility of progressively advancing sperm should be at least 32%. That's called category A, progressive motility. Then category B, which is a motile sperm, but it's not progressively advancing sperm. So motility together with category A and B should be at least 40%. So that's normal parameter. And vitality, or proportion of alive healthy sperm, alive sperm, it should be more than 58%. And morphology should be 4%, which means the shape of the sperm should be normal at least in 4% of this examined sperm. So for example, you may have 90% of the sperm you examine may have abnormality in the shape, but even if 10% is normal, that's actually normal. So amount of leukocytes per 1 ml of sperm should be less than 1 million. If it's higher, then it may indicate inflammation. So looking at these 6 parameters, you can tell whether your semen analysis is normal or abnormal, and whether there's a likelihood of male factor infertility.